So before your final year at Miami, there's a lot of conversations revolved around Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, I'm assuming you guys have a great relationship. Some of the clips you've seen and stuff like that. What is it like for you to have like this rivalry with Shedeur?
I don't have a rivalry with him. That's my boy. So at the end of the day, this whole process, we thought me and him were going to be 1 and 2 the whole time. Whether he's 1, I'm 2. Whether I'm 1, he's 2. And so that's just always been, our mindset. It didn't go that way. I thought he was one of the better quarterbacks in the draft as well, even throughout college. A lot of stuff out there on him ain't really, the truth, just because they spin it different ways. Like they spin stuff about me different ways. But I mean, when he gets his chance, become a starter, I know he's gonna make the most of it. And I'm ready to get back to work with him, after the season, talk some more stuff to him.
Cam Ward directly challenged the uneven standards applied to Shedeur Sanders, calling them inconsistent and unfair. By insisting that performance, not politics, guide evaluation, he shifted the discussion from one player to a league-wide problem. Sanders' treatment now serves as a test of how the NFL supports and evaluates emerging quarterbacks.
I feel a special relationship, especially me. First getting to know him 5 years ago when I started working with him. But it did surprise me because he's a good quarterback. He doesn't get a lot of credit that he deserves. Especially the plays that he made in Colorado. A lot of quarterbacks in the country are making those plays. So when he gets this opportunity, I'm pretty sure he'll have it soon today. He'll make sure he'll make plays on the field.
Cam Ward's public challenge to the treatment of Shedeur Sanders brought the issue into clear view. For months, discussion around Sanders has centered on his profile, major compensation, a prominent Nike deal, and the expectation to stabilize a struggling franchise. Rather than a standard evaluation of a top prospect, he has faced sustained skepticism from analysts, fans, and league voices. Ward's comments underscored that the standards being applied to Sanders diverge from those used with other rookies. By stating it directly, he did more than support another quarterback. He identified a broader problem in how the league responds to young players with significant visibility. The takeaway is direct. Assessments should reflect on-field performance and development, not external narratives.
A generational talent. I'm gonna prove him right. I'm gonna prove him right, don't worry.
Oh my God.
An article came out today. I'm generational. So I guess it's article versus article. I like that you think that, man. But we all know the truth. What? Trav gonna be first?
You generational, I'm legendary.
That's cool. We can be legendary. Legendary, get their ass.
We'll start going in like 5 minutes.
Shedeur Sanders entered the league with more than a playbook. He brought a public brand, a family legacy, and expectations unusual for a first-year quarterback. Before his first regular season throw, he was already positioned at the center of attention. Rather than assess him on that reality and his on-field ability, many voices reduced him to marketing, treating visibility as proof of hype instead of performance. Cam Ward pushed back on that framing. His point was simple: judge Sanders by the same criteria applied to other rookies. With Sanders' resume, production, leadership, and composure, most first-year quarterbacks would be discussed as long-term cornerstones. The evaluation should be consistent, focused on development and results, not perception.
This is the process with Shedeur, who I know is a buddy of yours, and how do you think both of you guys will end up doing in the league?
I think we'll both end up being one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I just think the work that me and him are willing to put in, the relationship we have to constantly compete each and every day, to better our craft, for ourselves. I just think it's gonna end up paying off for us in the long run.
Do you guys kid each other about who's going first, and how much does that matter to you?
Yeah, we play around, we joke around with it. Really don't mean nothing. The draft pick will never mean anything. At the end of the day, you got to show whether you can prove each and every Sunday. You can't just do it 1 year.
Disrespect shows up in two patterns. First, Shedeur Sanders is repeatedly framed through his father, Deion Sanders, as if lineage erases his own work. Discussion drifts to pedigree instead of what the film shows. Second, his visibility is treated with suspicion. His audience reach, partnerships, and ability to lift ratings are labeled hype rather than recognized as value. Instead of acknowledging that he drives demand and expands the stage for his team, critics call it an unfair edge. The result is a skewed evaluation. Star power is held against him while on-field production gets pushed aside. The standard should be consistent. Assess the tape and the development, not the last name or the attention it brings.
Well, Ward, where microfact.
Cam Ward's remarks went beyond defending Shedeur Sanders. They confronted how the league manages star power. The reality is simple. The NFL markets visibility, but resists it when a player doesn't follow the expected script. Rookies are supposed to be quiet, deferential, and grateful for limited leverage. Sanders arrived with leverage, brand reach, major endorsements, and confidence. And that presence was recast as entitlement. Instead of treating those factors as earned advantages, much of the commentary used them to diminish him. Ward called out that contradiction. The same influence the league sells to audiences is criticized when a young player exercises it. His point is a standards problem, not a personality dispute. Evaluate Sanders on his preparation, leadership, and results. Don't penalize him for having a platform or for using the leverage that the modern NFL itself helps create.
Now it sounds like the Cleveland Browns are going to all but imprison Shedeur Sanders in the football sense of a very talented rookie quarterback who obviously needs reps, needs an opportunity, and who now, barring some miraculous luck, will not get the opportunity to play in a single real game. I'm sure many around the NFL are celebrating as we speak. They are chuckling about this. Many in the NFL wanted to teach Shedeur and his daddy.
Cleveland became the center of the conversation. With Shedeur Sanders attached to a major Nike partnership, the expectation was straightforward. He should be given real game reps. The Browns instead leaned on Joe Flacco as the default choice, treating stability as the safer path while sidelining a quarterback with clear cultural and commercial pull. Each week Sanders didn't see the field, scrutiny grew. Commentary questioned the value of his contract environment and relevance, and fan debate shifted from development to doubt. That wasn't measured evaluation. It was a delay framed as prudence that eroded confidence in the process. Cam Ward reset the terms of the debate. He pointed to an uneven standard. When veterans or other young players secure significant endorsements, it's considered smart business. When Sanders does it at scale, it's recast as ego or hype. Even the scope of his off-field agreements became ammunition against him rather than evidence of market demand. Ward's position is simple. Use one standard. Assess Sanders on preparation, decision-making, and progression, not on discomfort with his platform. Treat visibility as an asset, not a disqualifier. The issue isn't attitude or branding, it's the consistency of the evaluation. Ward called it directly. The treatment has been unequal, and it should be corrected by aligning opportunity with performance criteria.
Fans need to recognize there's not a team in the league he'd start for. Not one. That's not ridiculous, that's not unfair, that's not a vast conspiracy.
Shedeur Sanders fans are Angel Reese fans. They're just fair weather fans who don't really give a fuck about the sport. Most of them are just Dion fucking groupies that followed him when he went to fucking Colorado, just like Angel Reese's fans had never watched basketball prior to her playing at LSU, and they followed her to the WNBA and don't know shit about the sport. That's it. Now Dion fucking groupies are running around acting like, oh, this is payback to his dad.
The timing is pivotal. Shedeur Sanders isn't trying to blend into the league's background. He's shaping the agenda. He drives debate segments, fuels short-form highlights, and moves merchandise at a pace most rookies never approach. By the metrics that define modern attention, he is the draw. Yet, a segment of observers continues to undercut him, not because of shortcomings on tape, but because of discomfort with how prominent he already is. Cam Ward put words to what many could see. Coverage around Sanders has been filtered through reaction to his visibility, rather than a clear read of his performance and growth. The market has already weighed in. Demand is real, not manufactured. Nike's record-level rookie endorsement aligned with that reality, signaling long-term value and cultural reach. This exposes a core contradiction. The NFL depends on star power to sell tickets, fill stadiums, and boost ratings, but it resists stars who set terms on their own. Visibility is celebrated until a player exercises it. The fix is straightforward. Apply one standard. Evaluate Sanders on preparation, decision-making, and results, and treat his platform as the asset it is. If the league benefits from his presence, its evaluation practices should reflect that same same reality, consistently and without penalty for scale. Shedeur Sanders does not depend on league promotion. He established his platform before the NFL and continues to expand it on his own terms. That autonomy challenges the status quo. Cam Ward's support was more than a defense of a teammate. It was a warning that if the league holds to outdated expectations, it risks falling behind the very players who drive audience attention and revenue. Claims that Sanders lacks real popularity ignore measurable facts. A large, active following, consistent merchandise demand, and sustained coverage across major outlets. Doubts about his standing as a quarterback overlook his college production and growth indicators. The pattern is familiar. Efforts to minimize him increase his reach. Each skeptical headline widens the spotlight, and each dismissive take creates more engagement. You cannot reduce a player built for visibility by arguing he should be less visible. The practical outcome is the opposite. Scrutiny becomes signal. Sanders is not merely enduring criticism, he is turning it into momentum, converting attention into leverage on and off the field. Many observers declared Deion Sanders was finished. They argued that his public style attracted unnecessary attention, that his health had deteriorated too far, and that his coaching career was approaching an abrupt conclusion. They misread his resolve. When speculation intensified, Sanders did not schedule a press conference or issue a formal statement. Instead, he released a short video recorded at his Texas home, walking alongside recording artist Lil Wayne. The footage established two facts. Although Sanders still walks with a limp, he remains active, and he intends to return to the sideline. Reports from USA Today and ESPN confirmed that Sanders had temporarily left Colorado to recover from a significant, undisclosed medical condition. He lost 14 pounds and missed several summer practices, leading to widespread debate about his future. Unofficial sources suggested complications related to previous blood clot issues, but no official diagnosis was provided. Throughout Sanders' absence, numerous media outlets framed his situation in crisis language, frequently questioning whether he would coach again. By comparison, when coaches such as Lincoln Riley paused their duties for health or family reasons, coverage emphasized understanding and patience, an imbalance that reflects a common difference in how high-profile black coaches are treated. Sanders' silence was not a retreat, it was a period of recovery. During rehabilitation, he relied on family, faith, and trusted colleagues, yet stayed connected to his program through brief online updates. The video with Lil Wayne demonstrated that he retained strong support from influential friends, countering narratives that portrayed him as isolated or on the verge of retirement. The visual evidence showed that his setback is temporary, and that he remains determined to lead Colorado into the forthcoming season. Since accepting the Colorado position, Sanders has dramatically elevated the program's national standing. He first drew national attention to Jackson State and the broader HBCU football landscape, then moved to Boulder and transformed a one-win team into a central storyline in college athletics. His approach, combining hip-hop culture, direct communication, and open expressions of faith, has challenged conventional expectations for head coach behavior. Each step forward has been met with heightened scrutiny. His time at Jackson State was labeled a publicity stunt, his departure for Colorado was framed as abandoning HBCU culture, and his social media presence has been cast as distraction from traditional coaching responsibility. Critics often magnify Sanders' missteps and question his motives, while comparable actions by other coaches receive neutral or sympathetic coverage. Showings of enthusiasm from Brett Favre and disciplinary intensity from Nick Saban are celebrated as competitive passion, yet Sanders' displays of confidence are frequently labeled arrogance. The discrepancy illustrates deeper biases rather than differences in performance. Sanders' success challenges entrenched expectations of how a college football leader should look, speak, and act, especially a black coach who refuses to downplay his identity. During his convalescence, Sanders maintained close communication with his staff and athletes, reinforcing the standards he had established: discipline, accountability, and belief. The program's daily messaging continued to emphasize preparation and resilience, signaling that Sanders' influence persists even when he is away from campus. Athletes echoed his mantras during workouts, confirming that his leadership extends beyond physical presence. Sanders acknowledges the seriousness of his medical challenge, but has refused to let it define him. He has publicly discussed leaning on scripture and prayer, explaining that his purpose as a mentor, father, and coach extends beyond personal adversity. In that context, the video of him walking in the Texas sun was less a strategic media effort than a straightforward demonstration of continued commitment to his team and mission. Colorado still requires Sanders' vision, Prior to his arrival, attendance was low, national media attention was minimal, and recruiting momentum had stalled. Sanders' leadership brought renewed energy, authentic identity, and higher standards of accountability. Players who previously lacked representation in college football leadership found a coach who shares, affirms, and elevates their cultural background. Sanders supplements conventional coaching priorities, scheme, fundamentals, and execution with empowerment initiatives that cultivate self-confidence and authenticity. As preseason camp approaches, Sanders intends to resume full involvement, even if medical recovery remains ongoing. His presence is expected to restore on-site leadership, stabilize the locker room, and direct media coverage toward on-field progress. For Sanders, the objective extends beyond compiling wins. It includes completing a cultural transformation that expands how success and leadership are defined in modern college football. Those who predict his decline overlook the underlying traits, faith, perseverance, and purpose that have supported Sanders throughout his career. Doubts, rumors, and disproportionate scrutiny have followed him from playing days into coaching, and he has consistently responded with results. His current health setback is another obstacle, not a conclusion. The broader initiative he leads, centered on authenticity, opportunity, and high standards, continues. When Sanders returns to the sideline, it will mark the next stage of a movement he has guided from Jackson State to Boulder. The recent period of quiet has been strategic rather than passive. Instead of defending himself in daily briefings, Sanders focused on rehabilitation, remote program oversight, and family support. Each brief social media message reinforced a consistent theme: faith and preparation. He has articulated gratitude for medical professionals and has reiterated that his mission at Colorado is unfinished. His public references to scripture have been direct but measured, aligning with his long-standing practice of integrating faith into leadership. By walking through his ranch with Lil Wayne, Sanders signaled continuity. The clip underscored that influential supporters remain engaged, that Sanders' broader network values his vision, and that he remains capable of navigating physical challenges. The visible limp was not evidence of imminent retirement. Rather, it documented the reality of ongoing recovery and the resilience with which he approaches each obstacle. Colorado's athletic administration and football staff continue to affirm Sanders' program direction. Recruitment communications cite his established record in fostering cultural relevance and national exposure. Prospective athletes respond to a coach who presents a transparent path to development, both on and off the field. Current players refer to Sanders' coaching points with clarity, citing specific drills and expectations that remain unchanged during his absence. These indicators demonstrate that the core structures Sanders implemented are functioning, and that his return will be an amplification, not a restart. Criticism regarding Sanders' public persona often conflates media style with coaching substance. Analysis from opponents suggests that social media engagement dilutes football preparation, yet Sanders' staffs emphasize time management and delegation. Defensive and offensive coordinators handle in-game adjustments, while Sanders directs overall culture, recruitment, and leadership. He has articulated that visibility serves to amplify program accomplishments and enhance player opportunities, not replace strategic football planning. Some commentary has attempted to reframe Sanders' health issue as evidence that his coaching model is unsustainable. The argument ignores the documented health challenges faced by numerous coaches across levels of competition. For example, college coaches recovering from heart procedures or joint replacements have returned to successful seasons after appropriate medical clearance. Sanders' case follows a comparable trajectory. Medical complications require temporary separation, structured rehabilitation is prioritized, and a managed return is planned. Institutional medical protocols at Colorado dictate clearance requirements. Sanders will meet those before resuming full sideline duties. Colorado's players have expressed public confidence in Sanders' eventual return, citing regular virtual check-ins and continued accountability. Several athletes noted that positional meetings included recorded messages from Sanders reinforcing tactical goals and personal discipline. These details confirm that Sanders has remained actively engaged, albeit remotely, and that team culture remains aligned with his principles. Looking ahead, Colorado's schedule will attract national attention, both for on-field competitiveness and the storyline of Sanders' comeback. Analysts will evaluate how quickly he reestablishes day-to-day rhythm and whether his physical limitations influence practice oversight. Internal planning accommodates gradual escalation of responsibilities, with medical staff and strength and conditioning personnel contributing to phase reintegration. The broader significance of Sanders' return extends beyond Colorado. His visibility continues to challenge prevailing narratives about leadership styles and pathways in college athletics. By prioritizing authenticity, open articulation of faith, and cultural expression, Sanders offers a contrasting template to more conventional models. His eventual recovery and sideline presence will reinforce the argument that diverse leadership profiles can succeed in elite collegiate competition. In summary, rumors of Deion Sanders' coaching demise were premature. Verified reports confirm a substantial but temporary medical setback. He used the time away to focus on health, sustain program engagement, and rely on a support system anchored in family, friends, and faith. His recent public appearance demonstrated active recovery and reaffirmed his intention to resume leadership in Boulder. The forthcoming season will test Colorado on the field, but it will also underscore the durability of Sanders' vision, one that combines competitive ambition with cultural resonance. Observers who continue to question his longevity overlook the resilience and purpose that have defined his career. Sanders' return is imminent, and the movement he leads remains intact. Urban Meyer's roster history underscores the absurdity. Meyer coached Aaron Hernandez, whose off-field crimes are well documented, along with other players entangled in assaults, academic misconduct, and more. Yet Feinbaum singled out Newton, a national champion, Heisman Trophy winner, and NFL MVP, as the worst. This selective condemnation is not new. When Deion Sanders recently suggested implementing an NIL salary cap to restore competitive balance, Feinbaum dismissed the proposal and called Sanders a hypocrite rather than engage with the substance. The pattern repeats. Feinbaum routinely targets Cam Newton, Deion Sanders, Jameis Winston, Lamar Jackson, outspoken black athletes and coaches, while extending grace to figures such as Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Dabo Swinney, or Tim Tebow under similar circumstances. Newton is no longer content to remain silent while others distort his story. In response, he laid out an accurate chronology, highlighting facts the commentary networks rarely repeat. One long-standing myth is that Newton was expelled from the University of Florida. He was not. Tim Tebow held the starting job unchallenged, and Meyer had no intention of displacing his star. Like thousands of athletes each year, Newton transferred to find a place where he could play. The move was strategic, not disciplinary. He is with 3-2-2-5-3-17 to transfer to and Moorbeck. Meyer was. Critics habitually resurrect the 2008 laptop incident to tarnish Newton's entire career. Newton has acknowledged the mistake, but its relevance is overstated. The incident did not prompt his transfer, nor did it derail his trajectory. After leaving Florida, Newton enrolled at Blinn College, a Texas JUCO powerhouse, and led the Buccaneers to a national championship while posting dominant statistics. That performance earned him the opportunity to transfer to Auburn. At Auburn, Newton produced one of the most extraordinary single seasons in collegiate history. More than 4,000 yards of total offense, 50 combined touchdowns, an SEC title, a national championship, and the Heisman Trophy. Achievement compressed into a single year under intense scrutiny. Even that landmark season is recast by Feinbaum as a cautionary tale. He claims Newton ignored head coach Gene Chizik by diving for a goal line touchdown when told to kneel, jeopardizing the game. In reality, Newton explained that the decision was a collective adjustment made in the huddle after reading the defense. While Auburn still held timeouts, the Tigers maintained control and secured the championship. Portraying that moment as reckless serves to recast Newton's success as selfishness rather than leadership. Feinbaum's approach to Sanders reflects the same dynamic. When Sanders urged a structured NIL ceiling to protect athletes and stabilize rosters, Feinbaum immediately labeled him hypocritical. Yet when Saban or Swinney voice identical concerns, Feinbaum frames them as thoughtful guardians of the sport. The inconsistency reveals that the determining factor is not the argument but the identity of the speaker. Unapologetic black leaders who control their narratives, challenge entrenched hierarchies, and Feinbaum's commentary often functions as a check on that influence. Newton countered Feinbaum's latest attack with a concise statement. "You're lying, Paul. Please stop." Behind those words lay a broader indictment of the media machinery that weaponizes half-truths. By calling Newton the worst player Meyer coached, Feinbaum was seeding doubt among fans, front office evaluators, and future historians. Newton, now an established media presence and entrepreneur, no longer depends on traditional outlets to correct the record. He reminded audiences of three essential truths. He departed Florida on his own terms, he led Auburn with support from coaches and teammates, and he captured every major accolade available in college and professional football without conforming to prescribed expectations. An unspoken rule lingers in American sports discourse. Black athletes may excel, but must do so quietly, gratefully, and without highlighting systemic inequities. Newton broke that expectation early by celebrating with unreserved joy, answering questions candidly, and refusing to minimize his personality. For some commentators, that confidence is reinterpreted as arrogance. Feinbaum's repeated attempts to undermine Newton follow a familiar script of policing behavior rather than analyzing performance. Yet, legacy rests not in a pundit's soundbite, but in tangible achievements and public memory. Newton's resume, Heisman winner, national champion, NFL MVP, speaks for itself. Millions of fans witnessed his impact on Saturdays and Sundays. Countless young quarterbacks saw someone who looked like them redefine the position's possibilities. The same is true for Sanders, whose player-first coaching philosophy and media savvy continue to influence college football's direction. Feinbaum's commentary cannot erase these realities. Newton, Sanders, Winston, Jackson, and others have already secured their places in football history. By publicly confronting misinformation, Newton set a precedent for athletes who now possess the platforms and technology to present their stories unfiltered. The microphone no longer belongs exclusively to legacy broadcasters. Newton holds it now, and he intends to keep it. A decisive shift that reduces the gatekeeper's influence and ensures that accomplishments are judged on merit rather than narrative manipulation.
I'm about to unleash about Shedeur Sanders. I just watched what happened to Shedeur Sanders in the Cleveland Browns' third and final preseason game. And I'm outraged, I'm sickened, and I'm saddened. By the way, Shedeur continues to be treated in the National Football League now by those sorry-ass Browns and sorry-ass Kevin Stefanski.
The Cleveland Browns are once again mishandling a promising quarterback. Skip Bayless criticized the organization for failing to develop Shedeur Sanders and for misusing his skill set. He argued that the team's decisions are undermining Sanders' progress and turning a major investment into a cautionary example. Bayless pointed to inconsistent usage, questionable play calling, and a lack of clear direction as key issues limiting Sanders. He said the Browns need a defined development plan and stronger support if they expect Sanders to succeed. Skip Bayless delivered a direct, critical assessment this week. After seeing Shedeur Sanders in a Browns uniform, he argued that Cleveland is mishandling the quarterback and undermining his development. Bayless said the team's approach shows poor planning and inadequate support around Sanders. He dismissed excuses about strategy and emphasized the need for better coaching, deployment, and protection. In his view, the Browns are setting themselves up for problems before the season begins unless they establish a clear plan for Sanders. Given the team's recent decisions, his reaction is understandable. Cleveland has a history of inconsistent quarterback development. Shedeur Sanders is a premium prospect, the son of a Hall of Famer, a proven college performer, and a widely recognized figure. The organization should prioritize his reps, protection, and a clear development plan, not place him behind Dylan Gabriel as if he were a secondary option.
But I'm going to answer this question by saying Shedeur Sanders, and I'm going to tell you why. I think he's being set up to fail. That's right, I'm going to say it.
Okay.
Here we are on national television, right? There's been 11 practices, if I remember correctly. He's been starting against, he's been playing against the third unit. He's fourth on the depth chart. And then suddenly you throw him into the start line, and he hasn't had any reps for the first team at all. Think about that. So you're just going to throw him to the wolves like that, huh? I mean, you know, if he had first team snaps in practice.
Yet here we are. Cleveland has one of the most publicized prospects and is handling him like a depth piece. The broader issue is the franchise's long record of quarterback instability and inconsistent development. That history colors every move they make. When the Browns draft a quarterback, fans don't anticipate a long-term answer. They brace for another reset. Shedeur Sanders should be treated as a priority, not as an afterthought behind Dylan Gabriel.
Let's give him a chance. Let's give him a chance with the play calling. You know you have an offensive line that isn't playing that well. So what do? Why not just play the short game so he can get the ball out of his hands very fast to run a competent goddamn offense? Outside of that, Shedeur has to be better in understanding that the offensive line that you're working with right now is not adequate. Why not allow the players that are competing for a job in this instance, Shedeur Sanders, to finish off the 2-minute drill.
When Browns fans see another quarterback selected, they brace for another setback. The franchise's recent history, from Johnny Manziel's failed stint to the rocky handling of Baker Mayfield, reflects inconsistent development and short-term decision-making. Against that backdrop, Skip Bayless's reaction to Shedeur Sanders on Cleveland's roster was blunt. He argued the team is already mishandling a premium prospect by treating him as a secondary option instead of a centerpiece for the future. Bayless's position is straightforward. Sanders is not just a name, he brings proven college production, leadership traits, and significant visibility that can strengthen both the offense and the organization's broader profile. Burying him on the depth chart behind Dylan Gabriel signals a lack of a clear development plan and wastes early momentum. Instead, Bayless contends, Cleveland should establish a defined pathway. First-team practice reps, protection and personnel tailored to his strengths, deliberate play calling that accelerates processing, and measured in-game opportunities that build confidence and execution. In his view, the Browns need alignment from the front office to the coaching staff to prioritize Sanders' growth. Continuing to treat him like a depth piece risks repeating the same cycle that has undermined previous quarterbacks. Committing to a coherent plan gives Sanders and the franchise a realistic chance to convert potential into sustained performance.
You made an interesting point. So I tend to have the drip, drip, drip. This was my Johnny Manziel theory, is that everybody makes mistakes, especially when you're young. But if I see 2, 3, 4, 5, then you've got a plumbing issue. It's not just you didn't close the faucet. So there's about 6 pieces of video in college where Shedeur was a little bit of a brat, whatever. Then there's the legendary cringy draft room. Didn't love that as a B prospect. Then there's back-to-back speeding tickets, both over 90, and a missed arraignment.
The NFL is navigating unexpected headlines after a former Browns coach publicly defended Shedeur Sanders in response to reports of multiple speeding tickets. The coach's statement has sparked extensive online debate. Supporters welcome the show of loyalty, while critics question the motive. Sanders now finds himself at the center of an unforeseen controversy, and observers want to know why a Cleveland coach is standing so firmly in his corner. The story is developing rapidly and continues to draw intense attention.
When it came out that he got a speeding ticket, I said it's not really that big a deal. I feel very differently about it now. Over 40 miles an hour over the speed limit, less than 2 weeks after you just got a ticket. I don't know if that's entitlement or immaturity. There's got to be some teams that are feeling very good right now that they didn't draft him.
Observers are focusing on Shedeur Sanders' recent speeding ticket, treating the violation as a measure of his character and sidelining his athletic, academic, and philanthropic accomplishments. The incident, driving 15 miles per hour over the limit in a borrowed Lamborghini, has drawn sharp criticism. In response, a former Cleveland Browns coach has taken the opportunity to comment, even though the franchise is widely viewed as unstable due to its frequent coaching changes and limited on-field success. By defending Sanders, he presents himself as an authority on discipline and leadership. The statement, coming from an organization seldom praised for stability, has nonetheless attracted considerable attention across the league.
You want to defend him a little bit. I thought this was an interesting take.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting that you said you were out because of the speeding tickets. To me, that's such a minor thing. You were so high on him in terms of his completion percentage in OTAs, and I thought that was a little aggressive on your part. But with the speeding tickets, I got a speeding ticket the first night of the draft, my first year there. I thought maybe I'd get the benefit of the doubt, but they gave it to me anyways.
As soon as the former Browns coach defended Shedeur Sanders, social media erupted with commentary, resembling the volume of draft night coverage. Posts and opinions appeared within minutes, and criticism escalated rapidly. Detractors amplified Sanders' minor speeding violation, while supporters argued that such reactions were disproportionate to a single traffic citation. Shedeur Sanders received 2 speeding citations, and the minor traffic issue quickly drew national attention. Before considering the former Browns coach's response, it is useful to clarify the facts. Sanders, son of Pro Football Hall of Famer Deion Sanders and a current college quarterback, was twice ticketed for exceeding the limit while driving a high-performance vehicle. Commentary on social media escalated rapidly, with critics framing the incident as a significant character concern, even as the league has historically tolerated far more serious legal transgressions. Stepping into the debate, a former Cleveland Browns coach, best known for a tenure filled with losses and contested decisions, issued a strong public defense. He argued that 2 speeding tickets should not define Sanders' reputation or overshadow his on-field talent and community work, urging a balanced assessment of the player's actions.
I don't love it from a 5th-round draft pick. I don't love that it happened multiple times. But I do think that this is the first time he's been away from his dad. And, you know, there's going to be some growing pains. Now, would I sell my stock on it like you are? Not because of a couple speeding tickets, especially in light of the problems that Brown's quarterback room has had to deal with legally in the last few years. I mean, this is nothing.
The debate quickly shifted from 2 speeding citations to broader claims about integrity, growth, and leadership. The former Browns coach framed the infractions as moments for personal development and urged observers to view them in context. Critics responded forcefully. Some called for disciplinary action, others questioned Deion Sanders' parenting, and a few sought to discredit the coach himself, despite his professional record already being widely analyzed across the league. The reaction underscores an apparent inconsistency in public standards. Fans often overlook on-field confrontations, heated sideline arguments, and other significant controversies, yet they treated Sanders' as routine traffic offenses, speeding without evidence of reckless endangerment, as indicators of serious character flaws. If such minor violations were adopted as the primary measure of morality in professional football, many players would face similar criticism. Sports media amplified the story almost immediately. Television panels dissected Shedeur Sanders' decision-making, treating 2 speeding tickets as indicators of deeper character concerns. Networks aired detailed segments under banners such as red flags and road rage, repeatedly questioning whether the citations might affect his draft evaluation. Although Sanders is already regarded as a first-round prospect, analysts emphasize that NFL teams value discipline and legal awareness when forming final assessments. Many commentators overlook the fact that other high-profile players have faced more serious offenses without similar scrutiny. Throughout the coverage, the former Browns coach defended Sanders, portraying him as a talented quarterback subjected to disproportionate criticism in a culture that expects near-perfect conduct. His argument was thorough and methodical, asserting that the traffic violation should not overshadow Sanders' skills, work ethic, or future potential. Commentators point out that the coach's intervention was not entirely selfless. He recognized the publicity potential. One day he was an overlooked figure from a struggling Browns era, the next he was a trending name across sports media. The discussion quickly expanded beyond Sanders' speeding citations to questions of image management and narrative control. Critics demanded disciplinary measures, public apologies, team sanctions, and formal statements, yet their objections seemed directed less at the traffic infractions themselves and more at Sanders' high profile, confidence, and resistance to traditional expectations. In practical terms, Sanders' brand remains intact. The coach secures renewed relevance, and the episode supplies another headline in the ongoing story of modern football. The next time Sanders is seen in a high-performance car, the debate will likely reignite, focused not on speed limits, but on the broader culture of the league. Meanwhile, new voices continue to join the conversation. Broadcaster Colin Cowherd has already weighed in, offering his own reassessment of the incident and its broader implications.
Breaking news, Shedeur Sanders last night was pulled over going 100 miles per hour. All right, he clocked 101, 41 miles an hour over the speed limit in Cleveland. He will have the opportunity to fight the ticket in court. Now, I'm not exactly sure where he was pulled over, whether or not that it was in Ohio or whether or not that it was in his home state. But typically when you're going 40 over, that's flirting with the line of reckless driving. Folks, I gotta tell ya, I don't understand what it is with these young men driving at absurd speed.
Colin Cowherd's view of Shedeur Sanders shifted abruptly. Days after praising the quarterback's poise and skill, he appeared on air to declare that Sanders is overhyped, unfocused, and distracted by celebrity. The reversal was immediate, without any gradual reconsideration. Cowherd now frames Sanders' 2 speeding tickets as evidence of poor judgment, even though he has defended other quarterbacks facing far more serious off-field issues. The sudden, wholesale withdrawal of support leaves viewers questioning the consistency of Cowherd's criteria and illustrates how quickly media narratives can change when minor incidents receive outsized attention.
This is
okay.
nothing.
Okay. The how much of this is I mean, Jimmy Haslam has his hands all over Manziel, has his hands all over Deshaun Watson, admitted it, man enough to admit it. I saw the reaction in the draft room when they took Shedeur Sanders. Pretty obvious it wasn't the coach and the GM's pick. How much is this team has 8 last place finishes in 13 years owning it. How much of this is we don't have a very good owner here like Washington, D.C. and the Commanders?
Yeah, I didn't love the owner stepping in and saying, hey, you got to take this guy in the 5th round. And I doubt they'll ever admit to it.
While Colin Cowherd urged teams to move on from Shedeur Sanders, former Browns coach Eric Mangini offered a more measured response. Mangini, whose tenure in Cleveland was marked by mixed results, used his platform to provide context rather than condemnation. Instead of sensationalizing the speeding violations, he encouraged viewers to consider Sanders' circumstances. A 21-year-old quarterback whose life is scrutinized both on and off the field. Mangini acknowledged that the tickets were mistakes, but emphasized that they do not by themselves define Sanders' character or future. He noted the extraordinary attention athletes receive today, combining the responsibilities of quarterback, public figure, and social media presence. Under such pressure, missteps are magnified, and criticism multiplies quickly. Mangini concluded that any evaluation of Sanders should weigh the totality of his behavior, performance, and growth, rather than isolate 2 traffic citations as decisive evidence of poor judgment. They have never loathed college football itself. They have resisted the people determined to reshape it. When Deion Sanders, black, direct, unapologetic, walks into a room of power brokers and speaks with authority instead of deference, critics recoil. During his playing days, they complained about celebrations and gold chains. Now that he is a head coach, mentor, and father, they label him something more polite, but just as dismissive, a problem. At Big 12 Media Days, Sanders addressed the accelerating chaos of the name, image, likeness market. He said college football needs a salary cap, not to hobble players, but to impose order on a system that showers unproven freshmen with 7-figure promises while the rest of a roster hunts for scraps. He called the situation unsustainable. Within hours, ESPN commentator Paul Feinbaum branded him a hypocrite, arguing that Sanders profited from NIL at Jackson State and now wants rules only because his most marketable athletes have moved on. The accusation spread quickly because it fit a comfortable storyline. Outspoken black coach gains from change, then protests when the advantage disappears. That framing ignores context. Sanders never criticized players earning money. At Jackson State, he urged corporate sponsors to partner with athletes who had been invisible to major brands for decades. What he wants now is stability, standardized guidelines, basic financial literacy, and roster balance that prevents locker rooms from fracturing over uneven payouts. When other coaches, Nick Saban, Dabo Swinney, Lane Kiffin, voiced similar concerns, they were praised for foresight. When Sanders spoke, the tone shifted to suspicion. The difference is not the message, it is the messenger. Feinbaum's response followed a familiar script. When black leaders question the structure of the sport, their motives are interrogated, their credibility attacked, and their competence doubted. He did not level the same charge at Jimbo Fisher when Fisher complained that NIL disturbed recruiting. He stayed silent when Kiffin lamented the transfer portal. But Sanders, who raised enrollment and television ratings at Jackson State, brought unprecedented attention to Colorado in one season and consistently mentors players beyond football, was called opportunistic. Feinbaum dismissed the cultural impact Sanders created, the exposure for historically black colleges, the draft pick developed, the infrastructure improved, reducing his work to a marketing stunt dependent on star sons Shedeur and Shiloh or two-way standout Travis Hunter. Sanders did not retaliate. He returned to practice, media obligations, and recruiting. His confidence is rooted in faith and in the responsibility he feels toward young athletes whose lives will extend decades beyond their highlight clips. When he asks for NIL boundaries, he is thinking about freshmen handed large sums without guidance, families unprepared for sudden wealth, and programs that abandon kids once production stalls. He has watched that cycle from the inside. He wants protections, not restrictions. Critics predicted Colorado would fade once Shedeur and Hunter leave. Instead, Sanders signed blue-chip quarterback G.J. Lewis and a wave of transfers eager to join a program that values personal growth as much as on-field wins. Recruits see a coach who challenges the status quo, who places black culture at the program's center without apology, and who will remain visible when social media buzz cools. They recognize that Sanders does not chase attention. Attention follows his results. Media outlets reduced the upcoming Buffaloes season to a win total prop. 6 victories, give or take. Sanders is playing a longer game. He wants to show young athletes, especially black athletes, that they can lead authentically, speak with conviction, and refuse to shrink for access. success measured only by the scoreboard misses the point. If Sanders builds men who graduate with financial literacy, self-confidence, and community awareness, he will consider the mission successful, even if Colorado finishes with 5 wins instead of 10. None of that registers with commentators invested in an older hierarchy. For them, leadership should remain predictable, reserved posture, muted tone, minimal cultural expression. Sanders contradicts that image. The possibility that his methods could spread to other coaches, to other programs, threatens a model that has kept decision-making and revenue streams concentrated for generations. So the debate is not about hypocrisy or payroll ceilings. It is about control of the narrative and who is deemed qualified to write it. Sanders refuses to surrender that authority. He knows order is necessary. He also knows whose voices have been ignored whenever real reform is discussed. By speaking plainly, he forces television panels, athletic directors, and conference commissioners to confront issues they would rather defer: financial education, equitable resource distribution, and consistent national standards. Whether Colorado exceeds betting lines this fall will not change the trajectory Sanders has already set. He made Boulder relevant, energized recruiting beyond traditional power corridors, and broadened college football's cultural reach. That influence will persist long after social media debates cool. If his call for NIL structure eventually becomes policy, as the NCAA and Congress now contemplate, Feinbaum's soundbite will fade, while Sanders' imprint endures. In the end, accusations of hypocrisy say more about the accuser than the coach. Sanders has remained consistent: empower athletes, hold adults accountable, and inject stability before unchecked money corrodes the locker room. The people who stand to lose clout in that environment prefer the chaos they can manipulate. Sanders prefers a system that nurtures the players who make the sport worth watching. His advocacy is rooted in experience, not self-interest, and his critics will have to decide whether to engage with that reality or keep shouting from the sidelines. Shedeur Sanders doesn't ask for excuses. He hasn't blamed limited reps, patched together receiver groups, or fourth-string offensive linemen struggling against Cleveland's second-team defense. He shows up, works, and demonstrates why he belongs. On day 3 of Brown's training camp, for the first time since OTAs, he finally received something close to a fair opportunity. He lined up with the second unit during an 11-on-11 period and made the most of it. In 8 plays, he did what he typically does when given a chance. He executed. He went 2 for 2 on a quick series, finishing with a decisive throw to tight end Blake Whiteheart that immediately caught the sideline's attention. There was no hesitation in his drop, no unsettled feet, and no panic. Just firm, accurate timing and clean operation. It raised an obvious question: what has taken so long for the Browns to evaluate him with a functional group? The story isn't only about one throw, it's about the delay before it. Sanders has been the guy for most of his football life, commanding high school programs, starring in the Southwestern Athletic Conference at Jackson State, then operating under national attention at Colorado. For the first time, he's been told to wait. He has treated that reality as part of the job rather than a setback. He has prepared like a professional since the moment he arrived, and on the 3rd day of camp in heavy heat, he let the football represent his case. While coverage focused on the veteran presence of Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco, Sanders made an impression with minimal volume. The difference with the second team was immediate. Protection held up, routes were on schedule, and progressions unfolded as designed. Within that structure, he looked like the quarterback who led efficient offenses at Jackson State and Colorado. Calm in the pocket, decisive in his reads, and accurate to tight windows. This was not simply a good practice period, it was a clear statement. He was not just operating the script, he was directing it. The timing was sharp, the reads were clean, and the seam throw to Whiteheart was a high-level anticipation throw, professional in placement and pace. The narrative around Sanders should reflect that when he is placed in a workable situation, his strengths are visible. Early work with 4th unit personnel included protection issues and unreliable spacing. With the 2nd unit, those variables stabilized, and his work looked consistent with his resume. The performance supported a straightforward conclusion: the evaluation should move forward with higher quality reps. Sanders has been explicit about his approach. He does not request special treatment. He intends to be prepared so that when an opportunity appears, he can step in without a drop-off. He has said he wants to be ready for anything and not offer explanations after the fact. That mindset fits what teammates and coaches have observed. A quarterback focused on the assignment, not the conversation around it. The conditions were demanding: relentless sun, heavy humidity, and a practice tempo that stressed decision-making. Many players fatigued as the session wore on. Sanders did not show signs of rushing reads or forcing the ball. He managed the pocket, reset his base when necessary, and continued to deliver on time. The path he has taken, HBCU starter in the SWAC, then Power 5 starter under constant attention, has prepared him for compressed evaluation windows. He has been under scrutiny for years. The heat did not change his process. He moved defenders with his eyes, anticipated breaks, and stepped into throws with balance. The crowd was not chanting his name, and there were no ovations. That was irrelevant to the task. He is focused on the locker room and the staff, and he is building credibility the same way he did at previous stops, by being reliable when the ball is snapped. Quarterbacks coach Bill Musgrave has emphasized ignoring external noise and keeping attention on install, footwork, and timing. Sanders is familiar with the dynamic. He has been followed by cameras and commentary since his early teens. He has experience living with attention and still adhering to routine. Under heat, with a narrow set of snaps and multiple decision points, he stayed composed and effective. 2 speeding citations, 91 miles per hour in Brunswick and 101 miles per hour in Strongsville, became national items. General Manager Andrew Berry characterized the decisions as not smart and stressed that it's not only about driving fast, but about the safety of others. Sanders accepted responsibility, stated that he learned from the incidents, and said he would follow the rules. The attention to those citations did not alter his daily schedule or his practice preparation. He arrived early, stayed engaged, and kept the discussion centered on work. Away from the field, he spent time at Rainbow Terrace in Cleveland after a significant apartment fire, distributing supplies and checking on families affected by the incident. There was no formal media rollout around the visit. It was an instance of direct engagement with the community without publicity attached to it. That reflects the same approach he shows inside the building. Do the work first. Sanders treats each rep as if it might be his last for the day and his only chance to show a specific element on tape. He prepares for protections, cadence variations, route adjustments, and timing with a level of detail that compresses the learning curve. When he is not under center, he studies coverages from the sideline, charts plays, and reviews video before and after practice. He writes down the next day's calls so he can anticipate checks. He has reference using virtual simulation tools to replicate snaps he does not receive physically. That is not a passive stance, it is an active attempt to reduce the distance between classroom and field. He is building relationships across the roster, not just with projected starters. He communicates with defensive backs to understand what they see and how they react to certain stems. He spends time with offensive linemen to align on cadence and protection calls. He connects with newer players away from the facility so that communication improves in practice. That is practical leadership, consistent, low visibility work that becomes obvious when the ball is snapped and the operation is smooth. 3 days into camp, a central question remains. Why hasn't he taken a first-team rep? Flacco has seen work. Pickett has seen work. Dylan Gabriel has been cycled in. Sanders has remained behind all 3 on the depth chart while producing efficient periods when provided stable support. Head coach Kevin Stefanski has not publicly detailed the plan for distributing first-team snaps among the quarterbacks. When asked, Sanders answered that it is not his place to comment on rotation decisions. That response aligns with his day-to-day conduct, respectful, professional, and centered on the next assignment. The staff is managing a room with a Super Bowl MVP, a former first-round pick, multiple rookies, and a new set of combinations on the offensive line. That creates a set of decisions about exposure, pacing, and evaluation windows. Within that context, Sanders has presented a clear case for additional evaluation. He has shown he can execute the offense as designed when the variables are standard. Musgrave has a long-standing connection with the Sanders family through his time as a teammate of Deion Sanders in San Francisco. That familiarity supports direct communication. It does not guarantee anything about the depth chart, but it does help streamline teaching, feedback, and expectation setting. Inside the defensive back room, veterans such as Denzel Ward have provided perspective on timing, leverage, and eye discipline that Sanders has incorporated into his preparation. He is operating without the immediate family structure that defined his college environment. Away from his brother Shiloh and his father Dayon, he is managing his own housing, nutrition, recovery schedule, and all the smaller tasks that accompany an NFL routine. Those adjustments matter because they influence consistency across a long camp. He has treated those responsibilities as part of the job rather than distractions, which is reflected in a steady daily approach. What he showed on day 3 with the second unit was not a surprise to those who have tracked his prior work. It was a continuation of a profile, efficient sequencing, clear timing, and consistent ball placement when protections and routes hold up. The 8-play period was short, but it was enough to reinforce the point. He doesn't need a large sample to demonstrate baseline operation. He needs a fair sample to test ceiling and adaptability. There is also the matter of perception. Public attention concentrated on the speeding tickets and the general manager's response. Less attention fell on the preparation, the efficient period with the second team, or the community engagement at Rainbow Terrace. That imbalance is common in training camp narratives. Sanders has handled it by keeping his answers simple and his focus on football. He has not tried to redirect the conversation. He has done his work and waited for additional reps. The objective next step is straightforward. Expand the evaluation with higher unit personnel and standard opponents. That does not require a complete reshuffling of the depth chart. It requires allocating a defined sequence of first-team snaps so that timing with starting receivers and protections with starting linemen can be measured on tape. The staff can then compare operation speed, accuracy under pressure, red zone decision-making, and 2-minute mechanics against the other quarterbacks. That is the most direct way to clarify the competition. None of this dismisses the experience or track records of the veterans in the room. It emphasizes that the purpose of camp is to test assumptions with current performance. Sanders has provided enough evidence with the second unit to justify a broader look. He has shown that the pace of his feet matches the pace of his eyes, that he can hold safeties with his shoulders, and that he can drive intermediate throws without float. He has also shown discipline to take the clean completion rather than force the vertical shot when leverage dictates otherwise. Every day, he has addressed the controllable items, meetings, note-taking, install recall, cadence management, and post-practice review. He has not asked for public guarantees. He has asked for an opportunity to compete on comparable terms. The 8-play sequence with the second unit was a small but clear example of what he can do when those terms exist. The staff's communications have been measured. Stefanski has not laid out a schedule for first-team rotations publicly. Barry addressed the speeding incidents directly and emphasized standards for decision-making off the field. Sanders accepted the criticism, adjusted his behavior, and moved forward. Those are the relevant facts. What remains is a football evaluation that can only be completed by giving him snaps with the top group and measuring the results. If that evaluation occurs and he performs at the level he showed with the second unit, the conversation will shift from potential to placement. If it does not occur, the question will persist through camp. Why not test the full picture? Sanders has built a case based on preparation, poise, and execution. He has demonstrated leadership by building relationships across the roster. He has shown maturity in handling external issues directly and moving on. He has given the staff reasons on the field and in the building to continue the process. 3 days into camp, he has answered everything within his control. He has shown growth, discipline, and consistent operation. He turned early fourth-team disarray into learning, then executed cleanly when moved to the second unit. He kept the discussion on football when outside topics threatened to dominate. He has not tried to win a press conference. He has tried to win every rep. If he continues to stack days like this, the next step is logical. Evaluate him with the starters, document the results, and let the tape determine the depth chart. Until then, he will continue to prepare, continue to compete, and continue to present the same message through his play.
We've got news.
Got news.
About my Cleveland Browns. We've got an oblique problem. Obliques are big deals, especially when it's your quarterback. Now, he might be fourth on the depth chart, but he was number one in the preseason game last week, and he did a great job. 138 yards, 2 touchdowns. Shedeur Sanders has an oblique injury. That is not good. I do not like this. I hate this because I want to see more reps for Shedeur Sanders.
Shedeur Sanders, a projected breakout this season, has been sidelined unexpectedly. The Browns coaching staff confirmed an oblique injury significant enough to keep him out of all activity. No reps, no drills, no warm-ups. Concerns are rising about how this may affect his momentum and force adjustments to the team's plan. The focus now is his recovery timeline, the impact on his development, and the next steps for the quarterback depth chart.
Browns rookie quarterback Shedeur Sanders injured his oblique during practice today, putting his status in doubt for Saturday's preseason game against the Eagles. He's the latest quarterback on Cleveland's roster who has dealt with a health issue, joining fellow rookie Dillon Gabriel and Kenny Pickett. Sanders, who is trying to fight his way up the Browns' depth chart, started the preseason opener last week and threw to practice. So how concerning is this for Shedeur as he is trying to, again, make his way up the depth chart, be QB2, potentially QB1 in the future?
Dillon Gabriel taking Shedeur Sanders' QB1 spot after Sanders Sanders suffers an oblique injury is more than a roster change. It signals the staff is choosing urgency over efficiency. You do not replace a quarterback operating near a 70% completion rate with one coming off a 32% outing unless the decision is driven by desperation or poor evaluation. That is not strategy, it is avoidable loss of production. The impact on accuracy, timing, and drive sustainability is clear, and the difference is apparent to anyone watching.
Well, here's what we know. I mean, after practice, Kevin Stefanski, the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, was not available to the media, but I did talk to him on the field as the players were coming off, and he told me that Shedeur Sanders complained of oblique soreness during the warm-ups this morning.
Shedeur Sanders' absence isn't just a gap in the lineup, it's a setback for the entire offense. He thrives under pressure and makes throws others won't attempt. When he's healthy, every pass has intent, every drive has rhythm, and opposing defenses know they're in for a long day. Replace him with Dillon Gabriel and the defense senses an opening. Corners press tighter, safeties cheat down, and linebackers blitz more aggressively because they don't expect the same timing, velocity, or accuracy.
Yes. I mean, yeah, I'm a fan. I'm not even going to try to hide it. Rich,
you guys are fans. Like, you guys talk about the Cleveland Browns quite a bit.
Yeah,
it's almost annoying to me.
It aggravates people. Like, people don't like the fact that Rich talks a lot about
They must love I'm here.
But it's like, you have a friend, and that friend's child is following in the family's footsteps. You want them to do well. I don't know why people have such an issue. I know Rich is supposed to be impartial, but it's kind of hard when you have that type of tie to it. But yeah, I'm rooting for Shedeur, man. And
Dillon Gabriel's 32% completion rate isn't just poor, it's untenable at this level. A number that low needs no context. It means 2 misses for every completion. Weather, opponent, and play calls are secondary when efficiency is that limited. That output does not sustain drives or keep the full playbook viable, yet he is starting while Shedeur Sanders is sidelined. The contrast is clear. Sanders brings accuracy, timing, and command. Gabriel's recent performance reflects inconsistency and missed opportunities. Choosing Gabriel under these circumstances reduces offensive reliability and invites defensive pressure. It is a decision that sacrifices efficiency and field position.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Dillon Gabriel, but to the Shedeur Sanders point, it is unfortunate because I thought he was gaining some momentum. I know the practice that they had before they left for Philly, Daniel Oyefusi reported that he actually took the most reps of all of the quarterbacks. And that was the first time that had happened. It was the first time that he had went ahead of Dillon Gabriel, practicing with the twos, etc. So, like, coming off that stout performance against the Carolina Panthers, he was gaining momentum.
If this were a clean evaluation, there would be no debate. Shedeur Sanders is the clear choice. He's accurate, composed, and consistent with a track record of high-level production. Dillon Gabriel remains a question mark, and not the kind that stresses defense. He's the kind that makes coaches consider leaning on the run to limit risk and protect field position. The reality is that injuries create openings for players who haven't earned them. Gabriel has stepped into QB1 while Sanders is out, but that reflects circumstance, not superiority.
We don't know the severity of this oblique injury and whether it will even keep him out of Saturday's game against the Eagles. As for moving up the depth chart, I'm the Browns preseason sideline reporter. I was there Friday night when he burst onto the stage and set the NFL world buzzing. And yes, his demeanor was tremendous. His poise was tremendous. He did the things that were asked of him. But at the end of the day, he wasn't actually asked to do all that much.
The real concern is how this could attach to Shedeur Sanders' reputation. The NFL is unforgiving about availability. An oblique injury for a quarterback isn't minor. It affects mechanics, torque, and timing. Even with a strong return, the injury-prone label can linger. For the Cleveland Browns, or any team seeking stability under center, that perception is toxic. Teams don't want a player they fear won't make it through October. That's the risk. Talent doesn't always overcome league politics. Once questions about durability start, they rarely fade. They surface in contract terms, roster decisions, and sideline evaluations.
So Shedeur Sanders is injured again? If you were following along on social media today for the Browns' first joint practice in Philadelphia against the Eagles, wow, you were in for a tumultuous ride. I mean, all the reporters, both Browns and Eagles reporters, were pretty much flabbergasted at the fact that Shedeur Sanders was taking 0 team reps during the day, and even Tyler Huntley was getting team reps instead of Shedeur. And then it came out, obviously, everybody's speculating. There's people calling for Kevin's jobs. And before I go any further, I don't blame anybody ever.
Meanwhile, Dillon Gabriel's number should be sidelining him, not elevating him. A 32% completion rate isn't a dip, it's a warning sign that points to issues with field vision, timing, and receiver cohesion. That's the quarterback taking snaps while Shedeur Sanders is out. Put their work side by side and the gap is obvious. Sanders shows consistent placement, timing, and footwork that reflect high-level execution. Gabriel's recent output introduces variability that shrinks the call sheet and stalls drives. You can't claim the priority is winning while starting a quarterback who isn't reliably delivering routine completions. Fans recognize it, receivers lose confidence and tempo when targets are off, the offensive line's urgency fades when protection doesn't translate into productive throws, team belief in the quarterback is fragile, and once it erodes, a season can come apart quickly.
We could be looking at, 3/4 of Snoop and maybe 1/4 of Dillon Gabriel. Not really exciting for the fans. Of course, it would be nice to see what Dillon looks like. Did spend third-round capital on him.
If you're Dillon Gabriel and you're a rookie,
is not
you
be
want to get
team.
healed. You want the reps. You want to take these reps. So what do you do to prepare yourself and get ready? Because, man, when rookies get injured, it's like these reps are so valuable.
Yeah, sets them back a lot. We do have some video here. Mike Garafolo had some video of Jalen Hurts kind of helping Shedeur use his cart to get off the field here.
Shedeur Sanders changes the entire equation. His presence under center keeps defenses honest, keeps teammates engaged, and expands the coaching staff's options. You can call vertical shots, open the playbook, and control the game's tempo. Dillon Gabriel limits that. With him, the playbook narrows, drives stall, and the defense ends up on the field too long trying to compensate. The Cleveland Browns are not in a position to gamble at quarterback. This is a franchise with a difficult history at the position. With Gabriel, the issues are visible from the stands. A 32% completion rate won't jump to 60% with a few extra reps. If anything, it will decline as defenses present looks they would not risk against Shedeur. And that's the core issue. Shedeur Sanders at 80% is still a better quarterback than Dillon Gabriel at his best. That isn't exaggeration, it's the numbers. If Sanders is a 70% passer when healthy, even a drop to 60% keeps him well ahead of where Gabriel is now. Yet the team is rolling with the quarterback who isn't delivering routine completions. Every week Sanders is out, his hold on QB1 loosens. That's the hard truth. The longer Gabriel stays in the role, the more coaches cite continuity and chemistry to cover what's happening on the field. Every throw and every drive has to be a statement, not just to win, but to erase any notion that Gabriel is a legitimate alternative. In the NFL, QB1 isn't handed back because you used to be the best option. You have to take it.
Started off with some positive news for Shedeur, and then it kind of just went left real quick. Shedeur got the news early on that if Dillon Gabriel couldn't go, he would get his second straight start in the Saturday preseason game against the Philadelphia Eagles. And then he went on to injure his oblique. For the fans who don't know exactly what part of the body the oblique is at and what that injury is and how it can impact the quarterback, can you explain to them what is an oblique injury?
It's like up in this area, right? Well, you can't see me, but like right up in here, when you go to throw, like obviously that's all that. So
the truth is straightforward. The Cleveland Browns, or any team in this situation, aren't going anywhere meaningful with Dillon Gabriel under center. You can frame it as progress and point to selective highlights, but reality will level it out, and by then the season is already slipping. Shedeur Sanders is the difference between a team with a path forward and a team playing out the schedule. He reads coverages, delivers on-time throws, and forces defenses to respect every level of the field. Gabriel turns the offense into guesswork. The NFL is built on results, and the results are clear. Gabriel's 32% completion rate functions as a warning sign. It doesn't need context, a clinic, or a film session to explain. It signals inefficiency that stalls drives and compresses the playbook. Yet he has been handed the role Shedeur established through precision, composure, and production. That decision undercuts the stated goal of winning. With Sanders, the offense retains structure, rhythm, and threat. With Gabriel, it narrows and exposes the defense to longer stretches on the field.
Honestly, guys notice it more when you're out winning games, right? If Cleveland starts off in a bad start, they're not doing well, and all of a sudden Shedeur or Dillon Gabriel are doing well in 7-on-7, they're throwing dimes, and practice drills, the number one defense can't stop them. People take notice of that, and the more that the players see it, they're gonna then the comments start happening over the lunch table. They start happening throughout the building, and that's when the pressure really will get severe.
The Cleveland Browns were focused on resolving their quarterback situation until Jason Kelce made pointed comments that triggered a strong reaction from ownership. The response inside the organization was immediate and intense. What exactly did Kelce say that has the dog pound on edge and the front office under pressure?
We've seen that miserable game by
the Cleveland Browns. So they throw Joe Flacco in there, and I like Joe Flacco. He did good, but they gave him the resource of all the first-team guys. Then they throw Dylan Gabriel in there with first teams and second teams. So Dylan always is getting protected. The same thing again, they gave this scrub max protection on every play. Yeah, he completed some passes, but let's talk about his mistakes. He's still inconsistent with his throws, but he at least had max protection.
The Cleveland Browns continue to be defined by inconsistency and avoidable setbacks. Even as fans hoped the organization had turned a corner, Jason Kelce, fresh off retirement, offered a direct critique that reignited doubts about the team's direction. His remarks implied the franchise's structure and decision-making remain unstable and recent progress may not hold. The takeaway for leadership is straightforward. Identify core issues, align on a coherent plan, and execute with discipline. For supporters, it's another sign that the problems run deeper than a single season.
They throw Shedeur Sanders in there with the lowest cab drivers you couldn't even get on 5th Street. And I'm pissed off, bro, because the play calling was abysmal. Look, even if you don't like Shedeur didn't even get a chance to be trash. Even if you think Shedeur is garbage, he didn't even get a chance to be garbage. That's how awful the offensive line was. Kevin Stefanski still doesn't want to give Shedeur second strings and first strings reps. Why is that?
Browns ownership's response shifted from measured to urgent. The pattern is familiar in Cleveland. The team once treated Johnny Manziel as a franchise solution, retained Hugh Jackson for a second year despite results, and invested heavily in Deshaun Watson through a costly trade and contract. These decisions reflect aggressive but poorly aligned planning. The outcome has been continued instability instead of sustained progress.
That this was the guy that they wanted to start. He's seasoned, he's experienced, he still has a big-time arm, even at his age, and they open with the Cincinnati Bengals. They wanted that experienced guy. He was always going to be the guy. They were not going to start Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders in week 1. Kenny Pickett had a hamstring injury. It makes it easy to go with Joe Flacco. And the question isn't and wasn't going to be who's the starter in Cleveland. The question is, who's going to be the backup in Cleveland? Who's going to be the number 2 quarterback when they open the season against these Bengals?
Fans still show up season after season, expecting improvement and bracing for setbacks. The usual pattern has been early optimism followed by a gradual collapse. But last season was different. For a sustained stretch, the Browns looked organized and competitive, resembling a functioning team.
Couple days, 3 days until roster cutdowns. How do you feel about that? Do you feel like you belong here on this team?
Obviously, I think overall as a player, I feel like I put in the work. I feel like everything I do, I try to do it to my best, and that's all I ask for. So I feel like everybody feels like, they should be on the team, and if you ask anybody on the team, would they feel like they belong, in their own eyes. So I feel like I do, but I'm my own player, I think about myself in a high regard.
The front office entered the offseason confident. Kevin Stefanski was being praised, and the Dog Pound believed the team had made real progress. Then Jason Kelce delivered a pointed assessment that cut through the optimism. Fresh into retirement, the former Eagles All-Pro and Super Bowl champion said Cleveland still looks like a team patching over issues rather than building a durable contender. Kelce's view was direct. The Browns' structure is fragile, and the roster is too dependent on perfect health at quarterback. He argued the team is one injury away from losing continuity and sliding backward. Because Kelce has operated inside a stable, championship-level organization, his comments carried weight with players, media, and fans. The reaction was immediate. People took his critique seriously, not as outside noise, but as an informed evaluation of how a successful team should be built. Ownership also felt the impact. Jimmy Haslam's response shifted to urgency, a sign that leadership recognizes the stakes. The criticism arrives in the context of prior high-risk decisions, especially the fully guaranteed $230 million commitment tied to Deshaun Watson. Watson has missed time and shown inconsistency when available, and the contract has constrained flexibility. Kelce's remarks highlight why depth, alignment between the front office and coaching staff, and a clear contingency plan at quarterback are non-negotiable. The takeaway is straightforward. Cleveland must convert last season's progress into a stable framework, protect the quarterback, deepen critical positions, and establish a plan that survives injuries and short-term setbacks. Without that, the games that fueled optimism will remain temporary.
If you're a betting man, who do you think starts for the Browns at quarterback?
Okay, this is the situation. Kenny Pickett, they actually traded for him. Joe Flacco, no one's bringing Joe Flacco in the building thinking Joe Flacco's going to be the starter. If Joe Flacco is your starter,
you got a problem.
You have a huge problem. And if they were saying Shedeur was the starter as the 5th rounder, you got a real problem too, because he passed over all these guys in these reps in the offseason in shorts, in bikini shorts, Speedos and stuff. Like, no. That kind of stuff. So I'm not that surprised when you put down a 3rd round pick on a quarterback. You do believe he has a certain skill set.
Jason Kelce stated the obvious. Cleveland committed to a quarterback who hasn't played at an elite level in years, and Joe Flacco's playoff run didn't change the long-term outlook. Ownership appeared more upset that the criticism was public than by the substance of the critique. Many fans agreed. They've seen this pattern before. Rosters age, injuries are inevitable, and when a single contract dominates the cap, one setback at quarterback can undermine the entire season. Kelce's broader point was about structure. The Browns prioritized the high-cost, uncertain starter over depth and contingency. The late-season surge masked issues that remain: limited cap flexibility, thin depth at key positions, and an offense that lacks a credible plan B. Fans recognize how quickly a strong defense can decline with injuries, and how an offense without redundancy stalls. The AFC North raises the stakes. Baltimore with Lamar Jackson sustains a top standard. Cincinnati with Joe Burrow returns to contention when healthy. Pittsburgh rarely slips below .500 under Mike Tomlin and wins with defense and consistency. In that environment, Cleveland can't rely on perfect health or peak form from one player. The path forward is clear. Diversify cap allocation, reinforce the offensive line and receiver depth, carry a legitimate backup plan at quarterback, and install a scheme that functions regardless of who is under center.
Given what we saw yesterday with Shedeur Sanders, somebody on the Cleveland Browns is 100% getting fired, probably by the end of this year. The person who's probably going to end up getting fired is Kevin Stefanski, because I know that he didn't want Shedeur Sanders on the team. It was Andrew Berry who made that pick. You can't really go against your GM. Bad things happen in this situation. But Shedeur Sanders is not without fault for what we saw yesterday. This is the play that we saw yesterday that has the internet just exploding, where Shedeur Sanders took like a 24-yard sack. Half of the internet is saying that this is all Kevin Stefanski's fault.
Cleveland showed progress last season, but the underlying concerns remain. Jason Kelce highlighted them directly. The Browns' long-term plan is fragile, cap-constrained, and overly dependent on perfect health at quarterback. His comments focused attention on structural issues, roster depth, continuity in coaching, and a sustainable offensive approach, rather than a single hot streak. That criticism resonated because it reflected what many around the league already see. Ownership's reaction underscored the sensitivity. Jimmy Haslam has presided over frequent coaching and quarterback changes, and external scrutiny carries weight when it comes from a respected veteran with championship experience. Kelce's remarks reinforce that last year's Joe Flacco stretch was a short-term solution, not a foundation. The team still needs a durable plan that can withstand injuries and inconsistency. The practical takeaway is clear: stabilize the system, diversify cap usage, and build depth at key positions so the offense functions regardless of who is under center. That includes a coherent development pathway for younger talent such as Shedeur Sanders, with defined practice reps, protection, and scheme alignment. Kelce didn't say anything outrageous. He articulated the gap between a brief surge and a credible long-term contender.
I have the faith of a mustard seed. Right, because this is the greatest resurrection since Jesus the Christ. Right, like at some point, Joe Flacco was thinking about getting into TV.
Yeah.
Right, Joe Flacco didn't have a job, and then now you not only come back and start for the Cleveland Browns late in the 2023 season, but they came back around to you, and you're now the day one starter for a franchise that just 2 years ago was in the playoffs.
The Browns' quarterback situation remains unsettled. Deshaun Watson was expected to be the long-term answer, but injuries and inconsistent play have prevented him from reaching an elite level. When the team turned to Joe Flacco after Watson's season deteriorated, Flacco immediately lifted the offense and produced results that highlighted the gap between expectations and reality. That a 39-year-old late addition could outperform a $230 million starter was not just a short-term surprise, it raised fundamental questions about roster construction and evaluation. Quarterback depth has been fragile, and the late-season surge masked broader structural problems. Jason Kelce's remarks made that clear. Cleveland is vulnerable if the starter is unavailable, cap flexibility is limited, and the offensive plan lacks a stable contingency. His critique drew attention to leadership and planning as much as on-field performance. Jimmy Haslam's strong reaction reflects the pressure on ownership. The organization has promoted a message of stability and progress, but Kelce's assessment suggested those gains are not yet durable. The path forward requires a realistic approach to the cap, a credible backup plan at quarterback, and a system that holds up regardless of personnel.